Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Ozcast.
It can be lonely at the top. We all know what it's like to lead and own a business and wanting to scale, but finding yourself at a glass ceiling. That is where the power of collaboration and connection comes in. Hi, I'm Natasha Malani. I'm an expert at helping businesses and business owners harness the power of collaboration to connect, scale and grow. I am passionate about collaboration. I believe that no one executes alone. We all do better when we do it together. Welcome to this Power of Collaboration podcast. It's wonderful to have you here. I hope you get the inspiration and information you need to harness the power of collaboration to break through your glass ceilings. Today, I'm very excited to welcome Tim Stollznow, Chairman and CEO of MyVenue, amongst a whole other range of organisations, which I am going to get through in a minute, but welcome, Tim.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Tim, MyVenue is a very exciting business. I can't wait for you to share the journey. You're also a board member of the Prostate Cancer Foundation, a very special organisation, Forestry SA, Chairman of Urara College of the Fink River Mission, a very important organisation in the Northern Territory, and Chairman of the Adelaide Lutheran Sports Club, where I have seen you out in the field.
Yes.
When I've been playing touch football.
Not playing anymore.
Yeah, I think I was on the field for about 5 minutes. So welcome. Let's just start with a background. Who is Tim?
So I'm an engineer. I grew up in the Northern Territory, born in Alice Springs, and spent my childhood out on a remote Aboriginal community called Papunya, which is out on the edge of the Tanami Desert. And I went to boarding school at Emmanuel College down here in Adelaide, and then on to Adelaide Uni from there. Did a electronic engineering degree.
That would have been a really interesting time growing up in the Northern Territory. Can you just share, how did that shape you as a young man?
I think it completely shaped me. I mean, from Papunya, when I was a boarder, there was no telephone, there was no TV, there was no radio, there was once a week mail delivery, and that was really our connection with the outside world. So when I came down to Emmanuel College as a boarder, the only way I could communicate with my parents was through a letter. And yeah, I think that I went home, a few times a year, and it was a very different place to grow up. And then going to boarding school was an important part of my life journey, even, as remote as it was from my parents, so and the rest of my family.
Urara College, you mentioned earlier, it's an Indigenous-only boarding college. You must feel great about giving back to that local community and standing in the shoes of.
Yeah, and I think, if for any people who know a bit about Aboriginal culture, they know that relationships are really super important, and I think me having that connection with the Pinnaby Luritja people out at Papunya in the Northern Territory brings a sense of trust and a sense of that, it'll be okay. We know this guy. We know where he's from. I also, I guess I know enough about Aboriginal culture to know that there's a lot I don't know. And I know there's certain things we need to be careful about. But, I think Urara College feels a really important place in secondary education for Indigenous kids from remote communities. It's very important.
I think there is a lot for us all to learn about Aboriginal culture, and you mentioned just the importance of relationships really stemming through to what we're talking about today, collaboration. It's all about relationships. So, and I just reflect on something else you said to me earlier about your physics teacher at school. You said you mentioned you grew up in Papunya. Your father was a missionary, your mother was a nurse. You came down to boarding school in Adelaide where you went into university. You became an engineer. Just share that story about how you got to that place through your physics teacher.
So I guess back in the day, I didn't have a counsellor, a school counsellor, or anyone that I relied on. I think by the time I got to year 12, I thought maybe vaguely I may go to uni. I had no idea what I really would do or which uni I would go to. And it was my physics teacher, Neville Reimers, who actually said to me, what are you doing next year? And I said, I'm not really sure. And he said, I think you should go to uni. And I said, what should I do? And he said, I think you should be an engineer. I guess I knew from living out of Papunya, I fix things. I love fixing things because there were no local plumber, there was no local electrician. When things broke down, you really had to rely on someone with a bit of local knowledge or a bit of handyman knowledge to fix it up. And that was me, or grew to be me in our household. And he suggested I do engineering. And then from there, I guess made a decision. I'd heard about computers and thought these computers seemed pretty cool, but I hadn't actually seen a computer or used a computer, and enrolled in electronic engineering with the view of getting to learn a bit about computers. It was one of the only 4-year degree courses that I was aware of that where you could learn about computers.
And that really bode you well. And I guess in one sense, your teacher was a bit of a role model, a mentor. And you're now a role model and mentor to others. Just talk to me about the importance of having someone like that in your life on an ongoing basis.
Oh, I think that role models are incredibly important for young people, and not necessarily direct carers that the individual may have in their life, but anyone, be it a family friend or someone from school, someone who takes a particular interest in that person's life story, I think is really important. And I think I certainly really benefited from a couple of role models that I had, not just when I was a teenager, but also through my 20s and 30s, that I think role models are just super important to your development of your career and to, your journey through life. And
particularly in business. I mean, we constantly need to learn. It can be a bit lonely at the top, and learning and sharing and not reinventing the wheel. I guess that's what I, want this podcast to be about, those that are listening to know that they're not alone and that we can learn and share together. And I think role models in that context are important too. Mm-hmm. You've probably experienced that yourself as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
So that leads into MyVenue, the organisation that you're probably spending most of your time on now as chairman and CEO. Just share, what is MyVenue?
So MyVenue is we make point of sale systems. So, for want of a better term, cash register systems for the hospitality sector. So that's includes stadiums and arenas, but includes pubs and clubs and coffee shops. And we don't focus on restaurants, but the hospitality sector also includes restaurants. So our game is point of sale. So we use an app, if you like, that can run on a mobile phone. So you can order on your mobile phone. You can order on a tablet. Servers can place the order on an app, on an Android application that's running on a point of sale terminal. And then from there, it all feeds back into the back office. So you can control your stock, you can control even time and attendance, you can do reporting on all aspects of your business, what you sold, when you sold it, what sort of margins you've sold at, what you think your forecast might be. So that's what we do. We have a particular focus on stadiums and arenas in North America. So that's where I've had some background in a previous business. And it's fair to say that we identified a number of years ago that there was some gaps in this market, and I really thought that it was an opportunity for us to develop a product to be better than, I guess, and more modern than the competition that was out there a few years back. So that's what we did.
Adelaide-based, and you're now doing business globally. What's the size of the business?
So we've got about 35 staff. We employed our first person in February 2020. As I said, it was focused on the hospitality sector. Everyone knows what happened in March 2020. By the end of March or early April, I was thinking maybe this is not the best time in history to be starting an international business in hospitality. But we soldiered on. We had no real revenue in the first year, but we didn't expect to have any revenue. None of the competition had any revenue either, so I think it's fair to say that the competition were beat up a little bit more than what we were. We managed to get our product up and running. We actually sold our first venue in North America in the beginning of last year, so the beginning of 2021. And as people may still remember, the borders were closed, so we didn't actually travel over there. We sold it over Teams, which was a pretty unique experience. But now we've got about 35 venues worldwide, including the Miami Dolphins. We do the Miami Grand Prix, which is a Formula One Grand Prix in Miami. They had their first Grand Prix this year in May. We did that one. We We do the Arizona Cardinals, which their stadium's got the Super Bowl this next upcoming season. So our system's running on thousands of point-of-sale terminals in some of the biggest stadiums in the world, and a lot of minor league ballparks and some hockey arenas and a few other venue types in North America as well. We do Adelaide Oval, our local stadium here in Adelaide.
I'm glad to hear you're doing the local stadium equally as much as you're doing venues all around the world. The Super Bowl sounds exciting. Have you been yet?
No, I haven't, but I think...
I'm sure you will get there.
I've avoided it in the past. You know, we have had people within our organisation that have been to Super Bowls within the point of sale sector. So we've got some pretty deep experience in big events, Super Bowls, World Series, Stanley Cups, all of that stuff. So
I do reiterate, South Australia needs to support its own supply chain first and foremost. So I think that's just a point I reiterate. So I just want to go back. You mentioned there was a gap. You know, you looked at what the landscape was, the competitors, and there was a gap. So what makes it different? But then what did you do from there? And when was this? How long ago was this?
So I started working on some technology for Adelaide Oval. I guess I had some connections with Adelaide Oval around the IT space, and we started working on some technology around mobile phone ordering, specifically for stadiums. There's a real problem in stadiums in that you've got about 80 minutes or maybe 90 minutes at the most to make probably about 80% of your revenue. So there's a lot of demand on stadium resources for a very short period of time, and everyone's experienced the frustration of standing in a lineup with 20 people in front of you, missing out on a critical part of the game, or a whole quarter maybe for that matter. So we developed some technology with Adelaide Oval that would improve that situation. And Adelaide Oval said that they would be prepared to sign up as a customer if we developed it into a fully fledged product, which we did in sort of 2019, got our skates on, and then 2020, 2019 was just through some subcontractors, and 2020 signed a deal with Adelaide Oval and decided to form a business on that basis. And we got focused on what we were going to do as a fully fledged product. And as I said, we installed our first venue in North America last year, in April last year.
So perfect example of collaboration. You had a customer with a problem, you had a solution, or you had the opportunity to develop that solution. And then, but you took a risk at the same time. Just tell us how often as business owners, or particularly early stage, we have to invest. There's a go, no-go point. Do I call it that?
Yeah, no, absolutely it was. Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
It's a really interesting question. There's a whole lot of reasons for people making decisions, isn't there? And I tend to look at it, when you're presented with options, you can make maybe 2 or 3 or 5 different decisions, to do that. Option A, option B, C or D. And option A might be 90% right, and through to option D, which might be 60 or 70% right. There's no option that's 100% right, and there's no option that's 100% wrong. The only option that's 100% wrong is no option, is make no decision. So for me, I thought, this is it. I need to have a crack. The opportunity's right. I know enough about international markets. I've got enough connections into the industry to give this a reasonable chance of success. I'd been involved with a whole lot of startups over the last 10 years as part of my career journey. So I knew about the startup industry, and I knew how startups should work. And I thought, I've got to have a go. I've got to have a crack. So I registered the business. I bought the domain name, myvenue.com. And then from that, just started developing product and getting a team together that could sell it, and away we went.
You just said then you know how startups work, and you just sort of started to allude on some of those key starting points. How do startups work?
So typically a startup, you need a team. So the first thing is, you need an idea and you need a team. I always get very nervous when someone has a startup that's a team of one. So you need a skill set which typically would cover IT, business, marketing, and then you need access to legal and accounting and other things like IP, but you need a team. That's my belief. And then from there, You need some sort of minimal viable product. You need some sort of product that you can go out and test the market with. You don't necessarily need to have revenue, but you need to have a plan to have revenue. And then you need to know how big the market is, who the competitors are, how you're going to differentiate yourself, how you're going to take on the market and sell a product wherever your market is, in domestically or around the world. So once you've got those certain things, then you need someone to fund you. Now, one of the best things I think about the startup industry is that part of the challenge is convincing someone to fund you. Now, if someone's going to invest in your business, you better have your story straight. You better have a conceivable plan, an executable plan that you can convince someone else that they can invest in your business. And if you can't get to that point, then you're probably not going to be able to convince someone to buy your product either. So to me, it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, is that if you can go through these various hoops, if you like, steps to get to the first investment, and then you can go out, develop your product into something that's saleable, and then start generating some revenue, and then you might come up against some hurdles, and you might find some more opportunities, and you need to go back out to the market and get some more money. Who knows? So there's all these different pathways you can choose from there, but you need to convince someone that you're investable, and then you need to communicate with them to let them know how their investment's going. So that in itself involves some discipline. You need to say, this is what we want to do. And then 6 months later, you need to go back and report to them and say, this is what we thought we wanted to do. Did we do it or didn't we do it? And if we didn't do it, have we got a good reason for not doing it? So you've got someone other than yourself who's holding you to account, which is really important.
We talk about startups versus an established business. And some of those key questions you just asked then and those pathways, even established businesses have to continually ask those questions. In terms of strategy then, what process do you follow in terms of planning ahead, creating a strategy? Is it on a page? I also often like talking about the process of strategy. Have you got any insights there? What's worked for you?
So for me, having a board is really important, or having an advisory board, having a group of mentors that you can reach out to test things with, to challenge you, to act as sounding boards. So we have a formal board. We have formal board meetings, and I'm as accountable as anyone else in the business. The board, I have to produce a board report. We have independent board members. We have members from North America as well as Australia. And for me, at least, that's very important. That's the way we have a better business because of it. So definitely having a board or an advisory board or whatever you want to call them, and having regular meetings where you produce a report that goes through some of the things I talked about before. What do we plan to do? What did we actually do? And what's our plan for the next 3 months, 6 months, 2 years or whatever?
Strategy on a page right there, really.
Oh, it is,
and
absolutely.
And then that accountability piece.
Yeah. And but then also when you are a startup and you do go out and get investment money, you will have some sort of a business plan or information memorandum or whatever you want to call it, but it is something that says, here's broadly what you want to achieve. And if you don't go back and if you can't go back to the board and tell them that you're broadly online, or at least have a good excuse as to why you're not, then you're going to lose faith with investors and staff and customers pretty quickly.
You've got some fast growth going on. You mentioned you've got 35 staff. The first person you employed was February 2020, right at the start of the pandemic, in the hospitality sector. Fast growth, you've now got 35 people, and they're globally located geographically, I imagine.
Yeah, we've got about 12 in North America.
So how do you create a culture in the organisation, and what does that mean for your business?
So culture, one of the key things that we have is we have a whole of business meeting once a week. So it's over Teams. So we have up to 35 people dialed into Teams wherever they are. We've had people from multiple countries. They dial in. We try and do it at a convenient time zone, but it's or a convenient time for the various time zones. That's not always possible, but we have people dialed in, be they engineers or project managers, people that are on site, people that are working from home offices. So that's really important. But then I think on top of that, culture is super important, and culture is more difficult when you're geographically spread and when you're on site and travelling and that sort of thing. But we get together when we can at various places around the world. We had our first face-to-face board meeting last month in North America, which was really good. We flew the board from Australia, went to the US, and we all met at a particular stadium over there, which was great. But face-to-face where possible, and then building around teams is really important. We do have core values as an organisation. I think values are really important. When we define ourselves as an organisation, we need to say what's important to us. How are we going to treat our customers? How do we treat our staff? How do we make decisions? How do we work together? How do we collaborate? We have one of our core values is successful together. And successful together might be successful as a small team within our organisation, as an organisation, but also with our suppliers and with our customers. And then around that, we also have core value awards. So every month we have nominations for the various awards. We cycle through each core value. We have 4 core values. Make it happen is one of them. Successful together, improve every day. And then the last one is proud of what we do. So these are all really important to us, and we did that again through collaboration with the team to come up with these core values, and we do our best to live them out in our organisation.
I love the fact that you've got awards, and I actually love your values. I mean, they are, to me, I don't know if I should say forward thinking, but that's the type of thinking I think culture is these days. It's about team, it's about improvement and passion and being proud. I think that sort of ticks all the boxes. Make it happen, of course.
Every day.
I love that.
Yeah.
Have you got any great stories around collaboration? Obviously, your business is built on those fundamentals of collaboration.
Yeah.
Just share a few insights around what it means for you.
So one of the things that's really important, I think, as a export company, as a company focused, and we all need to be focused, well, where possible, companies should be focused on it. If you've got a product that can be exported, then please go out and try, for Australia's sake, go out and try and find a path to markets overseas. It's not easy, but it's really important. And a couple of things that are really important. One, you need to go there. Wherever you want to export to, you need to go there. One of the things that the US does really well is trade shows. They do a phenomenal job of trade shows. Competitors can be as strict with their confidential information throughout the year as any organisation, and then they get together for these trade shows once a year or twice a year, whatever industry it is, and most industries that I've experienced have similar stories to tell. And they will be very open and honest about what they're doing and how they're solving market problems and what their latest products are and this sort of thing. So getting involved with your customers and getting involved with at least one trade show in the market that you go to every year. You can overdo trade shows and you can spend a lot of time at trade shows, but at least pick one and go to that. And you need to go year on year. You can't just go 1 year and then not go the next. But when you get to a trade show, understand who do you want to speak with. Who are your target people that you want to go and meet with some competitors? You want to not meet with competitors, but at least go past their booth and make sure you know what their product is and how they sell. And then you also want to target some potential customers. And targeting potential customers can be fun. It can be very difficult. One of the things as you first go to a trade show is you're on the bottom of the list, right? Everyone else is going to the VIP cocktail party. You didn't get an invite, right? Everyone's going to this special function. You didn't get an invite. Find out where they're going afterwards. They always go somewhere afterwards, right? Find out the bar they go to and go there and clobber whoever you're looking for.
Yeah.
The other thing,
tenacity.
The other thing, and I've done this a number of times, is the people that go to trade shows all have to eat. If you've got a potential customer who's got a booth and they've gone for lunch, go and follow them and line up behind them when you're lining up for lunch because they are stuck and they have to talk to, if you got a clobber them and ask them about, they can't run away. They're not going to leave because they've got to eat. So I've done that a number of times, is to go and clobber them in the lunch lineup, and it works really well.
That's funny. I think you need a good elevator pitch then.
Oh, you do. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you've got to have an elevator pitch. You've got to be able to modify. The other thing I would say is that if you're doing business in another country, it's really beneficial to have someone with you. And they don't have to know about your product. They don't necessarily have to know too much about your market. But if they can speak eloquently, if they've got if they're American, they speak American. If you're in Europe, a German, or someone from France, whatever, it gives you a bit of a local feel. And that people don't feel like, oh, we're dealing with, Tim Stollznow from Cowboy Town in Australia. We're dealing with an international company. And that always gives people some comfort.
Great tip. I mean, I also think breaking bread with your customers, with your suppliers, sometimes your competitors, is, it's about relationships.
Oh, it is.
Go back to relationships.
Well, especially, and I'd say trade shows in North America in particular, but also in Europe, you go to trade shows and you go out with your competitors and they will, if you want to go out and have a drink with them or have a meal with them, they're generally more than happy to do that, providing you're not too in their face. And then they share all sorts of little morsels of information with you that you might be surprised to hear.
I call it co-opetition. Quite often they're not. There's a competitor directly, but also they could be a partner for those looking to exit. That might be their target.
Yeah.
So always think about those things differently. No, thank you. That's some great insight. And, I go back to breaking bread. My Indian heritage, that's how we do things. We break bread. That's how you build the relationship.
Yes, yeah.
And naan bread in our case.
Well, the US is normally a hot dog at the baseball.
Yeah. So now just in rounding out here, I do like to ask those people on the podcast to suggest a book that you've read that's been impactful or something you're reading right now. Have you got a little book tip for us?
So I'm not a really big book reader, but I've read a number of books, especially around business. I do like books around business and people and why they do the things they do. I read a book a number of years ago, probably about 10 years ago, called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And I think that there are a lot of really good lessons in there for life and for careers, and also I think for understanding, how people came to be where they are and what things you can do as an individual in your own career to help with your career path that you might have in mind.
Great. Malcolm Gladwell was a bit of a legend, and he's got a few other books. Tipping Point for me was fantastic. So Outliers, there you are, those listening, add it to your list. Tim, I'm just going to reflect, you are one of the most humblest people I know. You're an absolute delight to have a chat with all the time, and you're very generous with your time. So I just wanted to put that on the record and say thank you and congratulations on what you're doing. And I'll hand over to you maybe to share a little final insight with those listening.
So again, I think being in the right place at the right time, a lot of people would say, oh, aren't they lucky? I come back to one of our core values is make it happen. Very often life doesn't just happen. You need to go out there and hunt it down. I remember once we were at a trade show in North America and I wanted to speak to the CEO of this organisation who was at the trade show and I couldn't get near him. And maybe he didn't eat. I don't recall seeing him in the lunch lineup. It was the end of the day. It was the end of the trade show and I was really sad that I hadn't caught up with this guy. And we went to leave and we were all in the lobby, there were hundreds, maybe 1,000 people in the lobby of this convention centre all waiting to go home. And there was this almighty storm. We must have had 3 inches of rain in about 45 minutes. And I saw this guy waiting in the lobby and I went over and introduced myself and got some time with him. And he was there, I think, with the chair of his board, as fortune would have it. And he had nothing else to do. He thought, well, I will just talk to this Aussie guy. 3 months later, we signed a preferred supplier agreement with that organisation, and it was just one of those lucky, opportunistic moments that you manage to take advantage of and turn it into something really beneficial.
Nice. So courage of conviction. If you hadn't taken that initiative, the pathway would have been very different.
Correct.
Thank you very much, Tim Stollznow. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. Congratulations on the success of MyVenue. At SA Leaders, we're all about collaboration and community. If you're curious to know more about how we help businesses and leaders just like yourself scale and grow beyond their glass ceilings, then visit our website at www.saleaders.com.au. And please don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast with your network, and write a review if you really enjoyed it. This has been an Audiosity production. I'm Natasha Malani, and I look forward to chatting with you next time. Happy connecting.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.